For many people on League, the most familiar text box from the Star Guardian visual novel event is probably this one. Either because they can't be bothered, have low expectations, especially after the previous visual novel event, or got bored while trying it. And of course, the event was also an awful mess. But if you wanted to know what you may have been missing or missed if you're watching this after the event ends, I may have you covered. For example, did you know Clagger appears? Did you know Nyla has lore reasons to be as insane as she is in-game? Possibly more so, actually? And did you know Kassadin is in it? The event hints at a continuation of the Star Guardian story, and possibly the return of the Star Guardian event sometime in the future, maybe with more skins for newer characters, and some of the currently unavailable Star Guardians like Gwen and Akshan, at least for PC League of Legends. There's also the possibility of one yet unnamed Star Guardian skin to be added for an existing champion, or maybe for a new one altogether. But was it good? Was it worth reading? Well, it's better than the Ruination event, I can say that, even if it doesn't really say much. But it's also worth mentioning I will be talking about the Star Guardian visual novel as a standalone story, not taking into account other videos, events, or games like Legends of Runeterra or Wild Rift. Is the story on its own a good read? First of all, let's summarise the whole story. It takes roughly 15 to 20 minutes per chapter at the slowish reading pace I used when recording the event, but don't worry about it, I don't plan to take quite that long. The story begins with Zoe bringing about chaos and destruction upon Valorant City, at least in a flashback or vision that Kai'Sa is dreaming about. In the introduction chapter, Kai'Sa's dream shows the Star Guardians coming to save the day before she is awoken by her familiar, Ina. Going into chapter 1, Kai'Sa is having a similar vision, this time of Zoe calling to her directly, in Kai'Sa's daydreams during her team's practice. Star Guardians of 2022 are all together training in some isolated area in broad daylight. The characters exchange some dialogue, some of which you get to choose, which for the entire story will only affect the next few lines of dialogue and make no lasting impact on anything else. You usually get 2 real options and a third to do the funny. The dialogue in this scene somewhat shows what the characters are about. Kai'Sa is focused and serious to a fault. Akali is more easygoing, the complete opposite of Kai'Sa. Echo is as mischievous as he is secretive. Sona needs her familiar to translate her thought into speech, though they often ad-lib or get it wrong. And Talia finds comfort in her identity as a Star Guardian compared to how she is in school, as addressed by Kai'Sa. Some of the responses come as very harsh and show an abrasiveness between the Guardians. Akali quickly reminds Kai'Sa that she does not want to be reminded of Zoe's attacks, and she expresses some fear towards monsters returning to the city. Kai'Sa can only reassure her that Star Guardians stick together and protect one another. They make sure to say, no matter what, several times. Did you know this is in case you didn't get it, this is foreshadowing. Did you know it's foreshadowing? Can you tell? This is gonna mean something soon. In Act 2 of Chapter 1, something begins calling to Akali, before cutting straight into a conversation between her and Kai'Sa. During some grueling complaints about their teacher doing his job, Akali plans to kill him, as a joke, vividly. Akali expresses some worry with a worried look on her face, and Kai'Sa immediately accuses her of letting everyone down, and Akali immediately gets angry. Hey, did you notice? They said no matter what like a minute ago, and now things are coming between them. Oh my god! Anyway, Akali complains that since becoming Star Guardians, they've never hung out as just friends anymore. As much as she wants to avoid thinking too hard about being a Star Guardian and their responsibilities, and the old teams, due to it reminding her of the calamity with Zoe. Kai'Sa always brings these things up and hammers them home. However, Kai'Sa does apologise and reveals that she's been especially worried about it due to her visions of Zoe, and Akali admits to the same with an addition. Something is following her and speaking to her. She hears it again, and as she thought, her dark nightmares of the Twilight Star drew a monster to her, Fiddlesticks, who summons them both to its own Chaos realm. Fiddlesticks applies fear to Akali, preventing her transformation, but Kai'Sa is still able to take her Star Guardian form, and Fiddlesticks leaves, telling them that all Star Guardians are meant to fall. They are transported back to the real world thanks to Morgana, who claims that Fiddlesticks just decided to leave on its own, then visit all the other members of the team. Kai'Sa is unable to damage Morgana, who says she'll kill their teacher. For real. Fiddlesticks isn't going to kill any of the members, just plant nightmarish thoughts into them that Morgana reckons may tear apart their relationships. In Act 3, Morgana reflects on the damage done by Zoe, or how it's been repaired and how she's going to become a teacher at Kai'Sa's high school. Then, she unleashes some monsters. People cry out for help as our new Star Guardians prepare for combat. Using some choice words, Echo brings out Akali's usual fear, and using more choice words, triggers Akali's distaste with how Star Guardians are supposed to be, as Kai'Sa is always talking about, and bringing out the fear that all Star Guardians are destined to fall. This reminds her of Zoe's invasion, but Kai'Sa arriving on the scene calms her down. But the player is given a dialogue option to cut off Akali mid-sentence, and none of the options stop her from getting upset by this. Akali does say Kai'Sa is just doing what she's meant to do, which could be mocking, or could be, and most likely is, her nervously joking and trying to seem okay. During the battle, she seems to handle it just fine though. They win, clearing out the monsters, and choose to celebrate, even if Kai'Sa thinks it was too easy. Everyone else chooses not to think about it. Then comes Chapter 2. Opening up with Kai'Sa asking Lux's statue for advice, wondering what she would do in her situation. The scene reveals that Morgana had successfully slain their previous professor, and now has taken up that position, for some reason. Kai'Sa says she can't reveal her identity in public, so she can't do anything about Morgana, and reflects that the city still looks up to Lux, and almost wishes she could save the day before reaffirming that she has to be a new Star Guardian leader, and to be like Lux. Akali walks in on all this and says that if Kai'Sa wants to talk to her, she can. At least if you choose the top dialogue option anyway, before the conversation goes back on track to a text message that Kai'Sa receives. It tells her to meet her outside the city, and Kai'Sa comes to a conclusion that the text message was from Fiddlesticks, who of course has the brain capacity to handle a mobile phone.
I haven't got a brain.
She uses this as a reason to keep Akali in the dark, and the rest of her team as well, as she goes to meet these mystery people. Alone. Though Akali does try to sneakily follow her. The mystery people turn out to be Star Guardian Syndra and Star Guardian Zoe, the latter proving to be still alive. Syndra takes the lead in the conversation, deflecting Zoe's bloodlusting threats. As it turns out, Zoe did not die to Rakan, and all the Guardians she wanted to kill were gone, except Syndra, who feels the same way back. Syndra says they've come for Fiddlesticks. When Kai'Sa describes the monster to confirm, Zoe blurts out that she loved chess. Syndra quiets her down before she can go on, and says Fiddlesticks is powerful beyond imagination, and Syndra and Zoe were both the original Star Guardians picked by the first star, before they were fully aware of the Guardian's oath. She offers to cooperate with Kai'Sa's team to deal with Fiddlesticks, and Kai'Sa agrees. Akali did not see any of this, as she was mentally assaulted by Fiddlesticks while on her own. She calls out to her team, but nobody came. In Act 2, a time skip occurs and we see Kai'Sa chasing after Akali, after presumably telling her team the news. Akali is pissed and refers to the trauma all of them experienced due to Zoe's invasion, saying Kai'Sa doesn't share in their grief as she only saw Lux saving the day. Kai'Sa tries to ease her worries with what Syndra told her, but Akali doesn't want to hear it, hating how Kai'Sa has prioritized being a real Star Guardian over her friendship with Akali. She quickly halts her rage and asks Kai'Sa to tell her it's going to work out. They'll win, and it will be fine. And the dialogue options are weird. You can either say the same thing as a truth or a lie. Akali will be pissed regardless, but will at least be honest back to Kai'Sa about her stalking her if you choose the truth option. Akali leaves, pissed off, and Kai'Sa goes to Noodle Bill's, a local ramen stand, but runs into Syndra. At this point, Noodle Bill is revealed to have always served Star Guardians. Not like in a loyalty way, but somehow the Guardians have all gravitated towards his shop, and he is aware that they are Star Guardians. Both Bill and Syndra let Kai'Sa know that even the older Star Guardians had their flaws and arguments, and weren't as pristine and perfect as Kai'Sa believed. Syndra reveals as well that she was part of two teams at different points in time. Though she was part of Miss Fortune's crew with Xayah and Rakan, she was also in another team with Zoe, Gwen, Akshan, and someone named Harp, but most of them have fallen. Zoe and Syndra had a chance to save their teammate from Fiddlesticks, but failed, likely causing them both to fall into despair and fall themselves. Now, they seek to put their old friends to rest, hinting at the true nature of Fiddlesticks. Finally, Kai'Sa promises, to herself, to not let Akali fall. In Act 3, Fiddlesticks attacks the city, but now the Star Guardians, with the help of Zoe and Syndra, are ready. Very ready in Zoe's case, who exclaims that Fiddlesticks killed Harp. Kai'Sa's team are all reluctant to cooperate with Zoe, but are pumped up to fight Fiddlesticks for Akali's sake. Fiddle brings them all into its own chaos dimension. The fight is mostly just dialogue, and then ellipses with flashy effects. Fiddle counterattacks, at which point Kai'Sa says it's too strong. Akali points out a cage in its chest, trapping a familiar, and they all strike it as the monster's weak point. This works out, and Fiddle was defeated. In the aftermath, a girl appears and Zoe approaches them shouting their name, Harp, revealing that she was a fallen Star Guardian and turned into Fiddlesticks. Zoe also reveals her motivation was to kill the Star Guardians to prevent any others from falling. Zoe then threatens to kill everyone there in the present to try and keep Harp around, but regardless, she passes on. She maintains her threat as she calms down, saying she'll be back one day, but not without thanking the team. Syndra realizes just how many powerful characters were in one place and realized who it could attract, the powerful Outer Guardian. Syndra says she must go, as with Harp at rest, her time as a hero has ended and must return to another star. Just like her character in Runeterra, the one attracted to the powerful battles was Nyla. Enter Chapter 3 with the arrival of Nyla, at least into orbit for now. Kai'Sa struggles to feel the presence of the other Guardians even when this close, due to Morgana's aura of darkness, but despite that, they're all excited about the shooting star they saw in the sky. That said, Akali is not here. While thinking about that, a shout breaks the tranquility as Rel and Quinn enter the scene, and the school. It looks as though Kai'Sa and the others were made to greet the new transfer students, and they knew they were Star Guardians, as both Quinn and Rel were Guardians as well. At least, they say they know them, but Rel also asks if they're going to bully them just a second ago. Maybe Quinn kept Rel in the dark about it, who knows. They both come with a year's experience already, with Quinn being a scout and Rel being armoured cavalry. We cut to Akali as she's still suffering from painful visions and fears of falling, as she wanders alone, cursing how she chose to become a Star Guardian. During this, Morgana finds her, hoping to help her on her descent to darkness, but Akali tries to fight back. Despite this, Morgana easily overpowers Akali, but the Outer Guardian Nyla arrives to save the day. Act 2 begins in the classroom with Morgana, who has the entire class under an illusion spell, so they have no idea what Star Guardian and Star Nemesis shenanigans are happening. Don't know why Morgana seems to also cover for the Guardians with the illusions, as they speak out of turn for a normal classroom, but whatever. There is a special dialogue option where you ask Nyla what she thinks of Morgana's threats, where she puts up a tough front, then falters and concedes that she can't just directly fight Morgana again, and she'll never get another chance for a sneak attack. Away from class, Kai'Sa tries to reassure Akali that with all their new squad members and Nyla, the Outer Guardian, they can easily take care of Morgana, but Akali's fear and tension with her are preventing her from having faith in Kai'Sa. Although Akali continues talking about death and the fate of Star Guardians, saying she wishes she never became one, Kai'Sa tries to invite her to hang out in town, but not as Star Guardians, just as friends. Akali seems to agree, but as Kai'Sa leaves, her expression sours. Morgana enters swiftly, asking if Akali is ready, and that there is no turning back. Akali says yes. In Act 3, Dark Heralds swarm the city, attacking and possibly killing civilians. Akali is with Morgana, watching the chaos unfold. She says she doesn't care if she's killing people so long as she doesn't have to actually watch them die. How very selfish, though Morgana promises she'll develop a taste for it in time. After Morgana leaves, Akali prays that Kai'Sa can hold out and be safe for just a bit longer. Back with the main team, they're all ready for battle, especially Nyla, who asks Captain Kai'Sa for instructions, despite her power level. This is so Kai'Sa can learn as a Star Guardian, not just learn nothing from letting Nyla deal with everything. They fight the Heralds, as Akali and Morgana are back together in a Chaos dimension. Morgana gains dark power from the Heralds, claiming it must have been what Zoe felt becoming the Twilight Star. She says Akali will bear witness to the new age, and age without light without... Wait, what? Now this is technically grammatically correct, as age can be a verb, and does somewhat make sense in context as Star Guardian aging may mean aging towards their fall, but this may well have been a typo. Come on, Riot, I shouldn't have to question it. Akali says she can't wait, ending Chapter 3. Chapter 4 begins with a confrontation between the Guardians and Morgana out in the school grounds, asking where Akali is. It's at this point Morgana taunts that the students have a delectable darkness to them, explaining why she's bothering to bide her time as a teacher rather than just going all out initially. Quinn and Valor, the scouts, couldn't find Akali anywhere in the city, but Kai'Sa reckons she's a better scout and pinpoints Akali's exact location based on a hunch. And indeed, she finds her by the Lock statue, where they first met. Kai'Sa begs her to come back, but Akali refuses. She hates how much Kai'Sa has ignored her, not let her talk to her, and left her to wallow alone, consumed by fear, and laments once more about the ultimate fate of Star Guardians. It's starting to rain, though I'm pretty sure that's snow. Akali says that she'll be dead by the next monster appearance, then, breaking into a sob, She finally says she's going with Morgana, breaking her tough exterior completely, saying to Kai'Sa to tell everyone she's sorry. Kai'Sa has a huge head. Oh, and now it's raining. In Act 2, with enough power gathered and Akali on her side, Morgana skips pretense and just allows the Dark Illusions to handle the class, as she monologues about their approaching showdown. It cuts to the arcade with Echo and Sona, hinting at how the two met. The rest of the act shows Kai'Sa interacting with the rest of the squad, as they goof around before the final battle, letting us in on a bit more about their characters. Final meet is with Nyla, who senses Kai'Sa's unease and offers some wisdom before finally showing a gift, which is Akali. Confused, Kai'Sa asks what's going on as the act ends. In Act 3, the final act of the main story, Morgana monologues as she summons heralds across Valorant City. It's kind of funny how they react though. A monster? Nyla is already in combat as the rest prepare. The best course of action is to go to Morgana directly, and Kai'Sa agrees as Akali returns to her side. The team are suspicious of her, and she tries to prove her innocence with answers to questions. Her answers are fairly vague though, and both Echo and Talia are unconvinced that Akali is on their side, sure that she'll betray them. One thing she is truly honest about is how she quit because of Kai'Sa being a jerk. She does answer every dialogue option, and the third one has her tell the team that Morgana offered her freedom from her oath and to escape death. Talia and the rest pass the responsibility to Kai'Sa before leaving for battle. With the pair now alone, Kai'Sa promises that she hopes to fix things between them after the battle, though Akali has other plans. Mocking Kai'Sa, she continues attacking her with no retaliation. Akali repeats how Morgana would let her break her contract and never die, just in case you didn't choose that dialogue option. She takes her fallen form, preparing to finish Kai'Sa off, but before she can, Morgana stops her, wishing to see Kai'Sa fall before her own eyes. Morgana summons the Star Guardians to her, at least, probably only Akali and Kai'Sa. She explains how the death of Kai'Sa would spread fear among the entire team. She asks Akali to do the honours of finishing Kai'Sa, but she refuses. Kai'Sa suddenly gets up and orders the team to attack Morgana. The rest of the Guardians seem to just kind of appear, however they found Morgana's Chaos Dimension. Then a semi-animated sequence begins and the art cell changes, as everyone prepares to attack. Morgana mocks as if she's supposed to die and melt in some cliché way, before unleashing her power upon the Guardians. Her attacks work on everyone, including Kai'Sa and Akali, but this causes Kai'Sa to only strengthen her promise to protect Akali. This brings the power of the first star to their aid, freeing them of Morgana's soul shackles as they prepare to counterattack. Morgana, suffering defeat, exclaims there's no way she's losing to the power of friendship like a cliché, because if you recognize a cliché and point it out, now it's funny! Right? The Guardians close in for the kill, and Morgana falls, dies, but claims that nothing ends here. It cuts to some time after the battle, and Kai'Sa and Akali are hanging out at last. Though Kai'Sa tries to apologise in earnest, Akali brushes it off, tells her not to worry about it, even if she was a bit of a jerk. As it turns out, Akali benefited by gaining new powers. Although vague, Turn Empty probably refers to her ability to take that blue fallen form like Zoe can. This link is not one she makes though, so she doesn't mind. While talking about the future, Akali randomly introduces Ari. She says she recognises Kai'Sa and tells her she must speak with Xayah, who's over there licking Rakan's ear. Straight after this line, Kai'Sa and Akali are talking to each other again, so I guess she didn't talk to Xayah. Kai'Sa eventually begins to faint as she hears from the Dark Star itself, warning of the eternal conflict between dark and light, and the eventual triumph of the former. And so ends the main story. There's a lot to question, but first, it's really easy to be harsh on these League visual novels, especially after the Ruination event, so let's give credit where credit is due. The world building isn't too bad, but I'm saying this after having read the main story 3 times over while preparing to make this video. There's less Deus Ex Machina compared to the Ruination with Akshan, and Nyla is far better executed than Akshan's awful character. Though dialogue choices don't really change the story, you can get interesting bits by choosing different options, such as Nyla talking about how she can't just fight Morgana head on. The character art is nice, and the various special scenes feature some pretty nice art, even if it does kinda jump around a bit in style, I find. And though it's obvious how heavily inspired this is by Madoka Magica and various other Mahou Shoujo anime and manga, it still pulls it off while remaining League of Legends. Though people are mixed about the Star Guardian designs this time around, Kai'Sa's design is quite nice for the story. Her hair is pink like Lux's with the style of Ari's. The the two captains she admires the most. But she's a pretty plain protagonist and is a rather reactive character, making her harder to care about. Zaya's story seems infinitely more interesting and engaging as she's pursuing an active goal of saving Rakan. At least that's what it seems like. I didn't play Wild Rift. Whereas in comparison, looks just kinda makes Kai'Sa a Star Guardian like, hey, do like good stuff, dude. Her clashes with Akali work for the most part, although some of the things that drive Akali away from the team seem rather convoluted and unnatural as part of their conversation, to be blunt. Another thing that causes Kai'Sa to be very plain and boring of a main character is a lack of narration. Some first-person thoughts from Kai'Sa would serve to not only describe the settings and feelings more, but even add to conversations. Too much becomes divicey and thick, but some, I feel, could help a lot with characterization. However, it is pretty difficult to get on board with the story at all, if even possible. The hook is merely Kai'Sa's visions of Zoe's invasion, but given how many people skip, it probably isn't much of a hook at all, and I certainly wasn't invested on my first read-through. With the betrayal arc of Akali, though her being on Kai'Sa's side is foreshadowed by just one line, it still feels too convoluted. After the fact, it seems that the team are following some strict script about not trusting Akali, knowing that Morgana is watching. And I suppose Akali really did hit Kai'Sa hard enough to be convincing to Morgana, but not enough to actually wound Kai'Sa apparently. It's kinda hard to believe that Akali, under all her mental torment that is still detectable by Morgana, while Kai'Sa does very little to amend it, is still able to have so much control. Maybe some more dialogue during the Morgana fight or after, such as Kai'Sa asking if Akali really had to hit her that hard while acting, could have helped sell that sequence a bit better, in my opinion. The way it is, I just can't believe them. Like literally, I can't believe in the way it's written, and I lose immersion. Also, Kai'Sa must have cracked a health potion or something because she's just ready to fight straight away, in Morgana's Chaos Dimension. And then there's how everyone is just able to enter the Chaos Dimension from outside. Unless Morgana teleported them there, but why would she do that? And that would mean they literally stood there while everything went on. Weird stuff. However, there is still more to this event. The epilogue takes a few different perspectives in different points of time. The first shows Zoe straight after losing to the Star Guardians during her invasion. Syndra comes to tell her how she lost, to all the Star Guardians fighting together, and Rakan sacrificing himself to take her down. This gets really confusing because Rakan and Xayah are mentioned at the end of the main story, and it makes no sense unless you go read the wiki or other Star Guardian stories. You see, Xayah searches for Rakan after that battle, and the other Star Guardians in her team help her search, leaving Valorant City to Kai'Sa's group. They eventually do find Rakan, so that's why he's alive, not dead. It also hints further at Syndra's true power, which is revealed at the end of the epilogue as she encounters Nyla a long time before the events of the main story. Which leads us onto the other stories available, the Guardian stories. These are probably the best stories available for a few reasons. They're self-contained short stories, so they're easier to get through and shorter to read, about 10 minutes for each character. Characters are explored better and seem more human, and we get a little more interesting information. For example, the aforementioned Nyla fight with Syndra makes it look like Nyla loses, but that was ages before the main story and she's clearly still fine. The Guardian story reveals that Nyla and Syndra pretty much tied. In Echo's story, he's desperately trying to go back in time to save his friend Clagor, but he's unable to as Clagor is determined to save someone else whom we recognise, adding more depth to Echo and Sona's relationship. Kai'Sa's story involves everyone else going out on a field trip while she stays behind in Valorant City to watch over and protect it. With this, she's also babysitting everyone's familiars, and it reads like a decently entertaining filler episode. Also in Nyla's story, we learn a bit more about her past comrades, such as how Lux told her to watch over Kai'Sa's group, how she would have slain Rakan, who was somewhere tainted by Zoe's darkness after the battle, and one of her comrades she is certain is still alive somewhere, fighting to prove his strength. We don't know exactly who that could be, but it could be anyone. This does lead to a slight negative, and that's if you aren't playing the other games of Legends of Runeterra, Wild Rift, or reading up extensively. Then things will seem really weird, like Rakan being alive, dead, corrupted, you just really won't know. Nyla's Guardian story does help, but with things like Rel meeting Zoe in the epilogue while with Rakan's group, the chronology can get really weird. Guardian stories are good extra content, but with so many of them it's overwhelming, and it could have been woven into the main story to get more investment in the characters, or even have branching paths on a map, like the UI in the Ruination or Spirit Blossom events, allowing you to see Valorant City and feel like you're in the world a bit more. And now, we haven't addressed the biggest problem with the story directly. Skip all. People need a reason to want to read the story, and making reading mandatory for rewards isn't the way. Instead, I think it should be intertwined with gameplay, and no, not Ultimate Spellbook. Make a PvE mode that interacts with the story. For example, missions to unlock playable Star Guardians in a PvE mode, either by scoring points in the game mode or by reading the story chapters, not forcing reading, but giving an incentive. It shouldn't need a forceful draw, because that investment in the story should come from actual interest in it. PvE game modes showing enemies and bosses that appear in the visual novel could be interesting, for example. Having Syndra and Zoe show up as ally NPCs in one mission could bring players to question why that's happening and go to investigate in the actual story. This happened with me in a game called PSO2, where at some points, while not caring for the story at all, one of the urgent quests had you fight the Photoners. But as far as I was aware, I thought the Photoners had all died out in the lore, according to some of the early story chapters, so that got me interested in the story, and then I went back to watch the anime, play through the entire story, and I loved it. But bringing people into the story mode is one thing. What about actually keeping them there? The current main story hook is weak, so those who give it a chance would likely put it back down kinda quickly. The first scene relies on a dream to hook you in, but immediately goes into the boring NONBIRI life of the current Guardians. They could skip this completely and go straight to Fiddlesticks. Why bother with Kaiser's visions of Zoe when this isn't important right now? Sure, it shows why Kaiser is so stern with being a real Star Guardian, but we can worry about this later after we're invested in Akali's turmoil. Knowing that something's up with Akali will give us reasons to try and learn more about how she's doing in the story from Kaiser's perspective. Then Kaiser's motivation to be a true Star Guardian can come into play with the visions of Zoe, adding tension as we worry how that will affect her relationship with Akali. Harp exists nowhere else in the League story to my knowledge, and so we have little investment in her, and see her as little more than a plot device. Though I'd like to emphasise cutting down unnecessary content from the early parts of the main story, we also need to balance enough exposition to make us interested, and for someone like Harp, who we don't even know, we really need to be interested in them. What exists already is okay, but we need more. Syndra's way of explaining things gets the point across quickly, but maybe a direct conversation with just Zoe could have made it more interesting and could play on Kaiser's trauma much more, giving a mental battle between her fear and being a true Star Guardian, willing to put her feud with Zoe aside for the greater good. These things don't feel strong enough in the current story. Honestly, I think there's too much in such a small story like this. Do we really need Morgana? We already have Zoe and Fiddlesticks. Could we not have just made saving Harp the main goal? Morgana does play a large part in Akali's fall, but so does Fiddlesticks. Though I think the Morgana part of the story has nothing wrong with actually existing outside parts of its execution, nothing that can't be fixed. Considering the limitation of just 4 chapters, it's harder to invest in all these little stories, whereas an expanded story against Fiddlesticks and saving Harp would provide more impact than the combined impact of these current, separate, smaller Fiddlesticks and Morgana arcs. Then Rare asks players to optionally read Guardian stories as well. The important and interesting details in the Guardian stories should really be part of the main story to help develop these characters and make us care, and like I said, appearing on an interactive map like other visual novels like Rewrite or Free Time to choose someone to talk to like Little Busters, or even the Spirit Blossom event, gives the reader some freedom to explore and makes it that little bit more immersive. The VN could definitely use more locations and interesting visual effects. Battles with the Heralds and Fiddlesticks could be much more interesting to read or watch with better visuals, or maybe even an interactive element, even if you're going to win regardless. Little Busters has combat, which in fairness is extremely silly, but it's so much more immersive for that, and that's literally just a silly minigame that does unlock another side story. Overall, the Star Guardian VN has no draw from the rest of the game to make you want to give it a chance, and even those who do have little reason to stick around and may just click skip all, which is a very popular button, so I hear. It takes far too long to get invested, and it isn't a particularly rewarding story. So to conclude and tie all of my suggestions together as to what Riot should probably do to make a better visual novel in client, they should pair the story with an appropriate temporary game mode like the old PvE Star Guardian ones, not just Ultimate Spellbook again with some reused ARI announcer. Consider focusing on a simpler plotline with more space to flesh out characters and give less dumpy exposition. Get closer to the real conflicts of the story, like Akali's fear of falling, in a more impactful way, wasting less time with the early chapters and Kaisa's 2 visions of Zoe. Cut the cliches, replace the hasty character development in the main story with the better ones in the Guardian stories. Use a map or overworld to choose who to talk to and how to progress, even if limited, to make Guardian stories less intimidating and to immerse the reader more. More visuals and effects, including backgrounds and locations. Better combat, perhaps interactive. A better final boss fight conclusion than the first light Deus Ex Machina. Actually make an effort to explain important plot points from before and after the story. Consider a first-person narrator voice from Kaisa. I don't think it would solve everything or make everyone not click skip all, but I can at least confidently say that some of these changes would help. The events recently have had an impression of low effort, especially with our temporary game mode this time around. After 3 read-throughs and the Guardian stories, I started to warm up to it a little bit. But the first time I read it, it was infuriatingly bad, cliché, weird, unclear, devicey. I couldn't say it was good, and could only claim that at least it's better than the Ruination story. But I must stress again that all of my comments on the story, good and bad, are merely my opinion, and I'd like to hear yours. If you've read the whole story, what did you think? And if you've only heard my summary, does it sound like something you'd read or like? Or are you glad I read it so you didn't have to? Let me know in the comments below. Shoutouts to the members OKJ, Nashborn, Awesome Toyota, Light, AJG Beat 91, Ash Ketchum, War Squid, Genocide, Ultimate Ground, Kaide, Boblax, Luxius, and my dad. For supporting the channel, thank you so much.